Imagine a man who changed the destiny of an entire nation without ever raising a sword or a gun. A man who stood not on the battlefield with weapons, but on the stage of history with ideas, dreams, and the power of his words. That man was Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of independent India, and one of the most fascinating leaders of the 20th century. His life was not simply a political journey, but a story of privilege turned into sacrifice, of vision turned into action, and of hope rising out of despair. To understand Nehru is to understand the birth of modern India itself. Jawaharlal Nehru was born on the 14th of November, 1889, in the city of Allahabad. His family belonged to the Kashmiri Brahmin community, a community known for its learning and administrative skills. His father, Motilal Nehru, was a wealthy barrister, influential and modern in his outlook. The Nehru home was grand, filled with books, discussions, and the latest Western influences. It was a life far removed from the poverty and hardships that most Indians endured under British rule. For young Jawaharlal, childhood was a world of tutors, gardens, and dreams. He loved science, he loved nature, and he loved wandering in the company of ideas. As he grew, his father sent him abroad to receive the finest education available. At Harrow, one of Britain's most prestigious schools, and later at Trinity College, Cambridge, Nehru absorbed Western culture. He studied natural sciences but was more drawn to philosophy, history, and the tides of politics. In London, at the Inner Temple, he trained as a barrister. By then he had tasted the intellectual richness of Europe, its literature, its revolutions, and its ideals of liberty and equality. But living in England also showed him something else, the arrogance of empire. He saw India not as the land of his childhood comfort, but as a nation chained by colonialism. Even as he wore fine suits and debated in polished English, his mind turned again and again to the silent millions in India who had no voice. When Nehru returned to India, he could have lived a comfortable life as a lawyer, just as his father wished. But fate had other plans. His restless spirit searched for purpose, and soon he found it in the presence of a man who would change his destiny, Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi was unlike anything Nehru had ever seen. He dressed simply, lived humbly, and spoke of truth and nonviolence. For a man trained in the West, Gandhi's spinning wheel and salt marches might have seemed strange at first. But Gandhi had something Nehru longed for, a deep connection with the people. Nehru saw in Gandhi the heartbeat of India, and in that heartbeat, he found his own calling. From then on, Nehru's life was tied to the struggle for freedom. He marched in protests, addressed gatherings, and was arrested again and again by the British authorities. Prison became a second home. Yet Nehru never complained. In those prison walls, he read, he wrote, and he dreamed of a new India. His letters to his daughter Indira, written from jail, would later become books cherished for their wisdom and depth. Slowly, Nehru transformed. The son of privilege became the servant of the people. The Western-educated lawyer became a leader who slept under the stars with peasants, ate with farmers, and walked barefoot in dusty villages. He rose as one of the strongest voices of the Indian National Congress. If Gandhi was the spiritual guide of the movement, Nehru was its face of modernity. He spoke of socialism, of science, of industrial progress. He envisioned a country that would not just win political freedom but also conquer poverty, ignorance, and inequality. His speeches inspired millions, particularly the youth, who saw in him a leader who carried both passion and intellect. And then, after decades of struggle, came the moment. Midnight, August 15, 1947. The world slept, but India awakened. Nehru, now Prime Minister of a free nation, stood before the Constituent Assembly and spoke words that still echo through history. At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom. That speech was more than an announcement. It was a promise. A promise to lift a nation from centuries of subjugation into the dawn of dignity and self-rule. But freedom was not sweet alone. It came with wounds. The partition of India and Pakistan was one of the greatest human tragedies of the 20th century. Millions were uprooted from their homes. Trains arrived filled not with passengers, but with corpses. Villages burned. Families torn apart. As Prime Minister, Nehru faced perhaps the hardest trial of his life. He had to lead with compassion, to calm hatred, to restore faith when humanity itself seemed broken. The burden was immense, but Nehru did not falter. He visited refugee camps, he embraced orphans, and he spoke to the people with both firmness and empathy. He reminded them that the destiny of India could not be built on blood and hatred, but on healing and unity. As the dust of partition settled, Nehru turned his eyes firmly toward the future. What should India become? For Nehru, the answer was clear. India must modernize. India must rise through education, science, and industry. He believed that without economic strength, political freedom would mean little. And so he began building. Great dams rose on India's rivers Bhakra-Nangal, Hirakud, and others, symbols of power and progress. These dams, he declared, are the temples of modern India. He founded institutions of excellence, the Indian Institutes of Technology, research centers, universities. He wanted India's children to learn not just from tradition, but from technology, to master the future as much as they honored the past. Yet Nehru was not a man of machines alone. He was a man of democracy. At a time when many newly free nations slipped into dictatorship, Nehru chose the harder path. He insisted that India's parliament must be strong, that elections must be free, that people must have the power to choose their leaders. He respected criticism, welcomed debate, and believed that freedom of the press was the lifeline of democracy. Under his watch, India held its first general election in 1951-52, the largest democratic exercise the world had ever seen. Millions voted, many for the first time in their lives, and India proved to the world that democracy was not a Western gift but a universal right. On the world stage, Nehru's voice carried weight. The Cold War was dividing the globe into two camps, America and the Soviet Union. Each sought allies. But Nehru refused to bow. He believed India must remain independent, charting its own destiny. Along with leaders like Tito of Yugoslavia and Nasser of Egypt, he founded the non-aligned movement, giving smaller nations dignity in a polarized world. He spoke at the United Nations with authority, not as a beggar nation but as the representative of a civilization that had risen again. Yet behind the public figure was a man of deep emotion. Children adored him, calling him Chacha Nehru. He wore a fresh red rose in his jacket pocket each day, a small symbol of his belief in beauty and life. He loved literature, he loved writing, and his books The Discovery of India, Glimpses of World History are filled with both intellect and poetry. They reveal a man who was both a leader and a dreamer, a thinker who carried the weight of history on his shoulders but never lost his wonder for life. But Nehru was not without flaws. His idealism sometimes clouded his judgment. He trusted China as a friend, believing in brotherhood, Hindi Chini bye bye. But in 1962, China betrayed that trust, launching war on India. The defeat was a painful blow. It shook his confidence and left the nation wounded. Critics pounced, accusing him of being naive, of failing to prepare. Nehru carried that pain until his last days. Yet, even in failure, he showed dignity. He admitted mistakes but never abandoned his belief in peace and humanity. On May 27, 1964, Jawaharlal Nehru passed away. His death brought silence across India. Crowds poured into the streets, weeping openly. For 17 years, he had been the face of independent India, the steady hand that guided it through storms. To millions, his passing felt like the loss of a father. The nation had lost not just a prime minister, but a dreamer who had given it courage when it was most fragile. Today, Nehru's legacy is complex, debated, sometimes even criticized. Yet, it is undeniable. He built the foundations of democracy in India. He gave it institutions of science and learning. He gave it a voice of independence in global affairs. Above all, he gave it hope, the belief that India, with all its diversity and challenges, could stand tall as a modern nation. Jawaharlal Nehru's story is more than the story of a man. It is the story of a nation rising. He was a child of privilege who chose sacrifice, a dreamer who became a doer, a leader who believed that freedom must mean more than independence, that it must mean progress, equality, and justice. His words still echo, his vision still guides, and his dream still calls to us. He once said, "The future beckons to us. Whither do we go, and what shall be our endeavor? To bring freedom and opportunity to the common man, to fight and end poverty and ignorance and disease, to build up a prosperous, democratic, and progressive nation, and to create social, economic, and political institutions which will ensure justice and fullness of life to every man and woman." These were not just words of a speech. They were the heartbeat of a leader, the dream of a nation, and the legacy of a man named Jawaharlal Nehru.